Oh,
He said that monitor,
Just,
he's not gonna open the he's not gonna turn the
just
monitor.
relax a little bit.
There's a
We're
shelter
up and
pet who
going. Yes,
wants
we
to
are
know.
up and running. So call to
Yeah,
order.
today. Visit the shelterpetproject.org.
Amendment/approval of the agenda.
Adopt.
Motion to be made. I'll move to approve the agenda. Okay, without any additions or corrections?
And I'll second it. We're not doing a flag salute or...
Yes, of course we will. That's,
Okay.
I don't know why that's not on here. Let's do the flag salute.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Somebody tried to trick us with this agenda.
Now I will second that motion.
Okay. All in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries 3-0. I see no public here. Dave, did you want to do a public comment or wait till after the presentations when it says public comment? You got an agenda? There's agenda in the door. Presentations, Commissioner Trost, Board of Commissioners Rules of Order.
Thanks, Chair. I did some research and some calling around to some colleagues, and what I learned is that there is essentially three main rules of order that are utilized. Obviously, we all know Roberts. The other one is called Rosenberg, and the third one is called Democratic Rules of Order. And so here's my summary of what I kind of found.
Okay.
Is that Roberts is very complicated. It's about 700 pages. It was developed in the 1800s for Congress. It's an interesting set of rules because somebody who knows how to utilize them can use that to an advantage to somebody who doesn't know how to use them as well. It's definitely designed for larger governing bodies, right? When you're dealing with many individuals. The next one was Rosenberg's. Rosenberg's was created much more recently, and it's a simplified version. There's not a lot of different complicated motions that can be made. It was designed for smaller governments. And then there's the democratic process, which is the simplest of all the forms. It's about I think it's an 18-page document in its total. And it, from what I gathered, is more geared towards like nonprofit boards, community boards, right? Where you get you may have a lot of people that aren't as savvy with process, and so, but they still need to get things done. It's very straightforward, and so looking at them, I think there's great stuff to pull from each, and there's some things that we may want to look at as a whole and say, is that dated? I'll give you an example. And Medford's actually doing this right now. And one of the things that they are hung up on, and this is just one tiny deal of the whole thing, but it just shows kind of how contrasting things are. But there's a norm that you stand up, you provide your name and address prior to speaking, and that's a norm in many governments. And the point that they were bringing up is that with that rule and how people can utilize information, social media, et cetera, at the touch of their hand, there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable speaking in public now because of having to have that disclosure. So, after going back and forth, an easy way to possibly, write that into the rules is to say on the speaker slip, you provide your address so that an email if we need to contact you after the meeting. That way it's not put out in public, but yet we still retain that information. And from what I understand, like on that piece, just that piece, the intention was to prevent non-citizen members to come in and disrupt meetings, right?
It had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Yeah, they weren't a citizen of the county or, gotcha.
So, so there's a lot to look at, and so I guess what I would maybe suggest is, that we agree that one of us works with county council and director of operations to kind of bring back a formal proposal, an idea, kind of look at them all, combine what we think is most prevalent and useful and to guide, and then have something to actually present as a working document that we may have to amend or whatever after we get to looking at it, but there may be things that we agree upon that we don't agree upon, but coming back with something like that.
It would really be nice to have a set, kind of a complete set of rules that can go forward when you are all dead and gone. That would be nice, and then that would give some structure to the entire operation. Really, I think it's good.
Well, and I'd like to see some signage too put up before you come in for the people that are going to come in and speak, so they clearly understand what rules they're following. And I know that a lot of times, we try to be as courteous and respectful as possible, but we'll be on a passionate topic, something passionate to the community, and people will speak. We'll be in a discussion about it, and then someone will walk up to the microphone and start to speak, or raise their hand in the back of the room, and then we completely go off order trying to accommodate that. And I think if we had some signage and we had some more structure to that, it would make the meetings more efficient and be fair and equal to everybody.
That signage should probably be on outside the room as well as mounted on the carpet here. Yeah.
Mounted on the carpet, yes, our carpeted.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Tack it in. Yeah, so for sure, I think there's a lot of things that we can be to be more effective and productive. And like, for instance, in speakers, I was looking at some locations, they have, like we have, where there's a designated speaker opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, and then others, they, on the agenda slip, if it's pertaining to an agenda item, they afford the public comment before the discussion takes place. So, we're like, for now, we're discussing this, but prior to this, it would have been, does anybody have a public comment? I see there's one person who has public comment regarding the rules of order. Would you like to say your piece? And then we go into business.
Yeah.
That's how we did it at the port, and it seemed like it was a lot more on point, because otherwise it's sort of like you're just letting them talk, and then you're done.
Sure.
On that public comment thing, they say, everybody speaks at one time, but what they're speaking about might be number 7
Right.
on the action discussion item. So the city does that, like, I just did a meeting, and so, yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of different forms. It's just, I think we find one that's gonna have some, that we can use, that'll be sustainable, that, like Ted said, can provide
Yep.
some structure.
So simplistic is better. I prefer that.
Agreed.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, and you're already pretty deep into this, so it makes sense for you to be the guy.
I would, no problem, absolutely, yeah. And I would be happy to work with Ted and also kind of some of the other colleagues that I've called around to get some ideas on how they like their systems, and what they would change. Okay, well, certainly, will do.
Okay.
You're still up, bud.
Okay, Next one is the
Role of
liaison.
commissioners commissioner
Okay.
liaisons.
So, obviously, this topic is really vital right now with the decision of the county director of operations and ensuring that we have the right communication flow, right? And I think, you know, there's been so much back and forth between, there's a county admin, there's not a county admin, there's a director of operations, and there might be, you know, it's just back and forth. And so, I think we owe it to the departments and everybody to have clear and concise expectations on our role and their role with us. So, I printed out a couple of things. You know, I think I printed out the original resolution with the liaison rules that was repealed, and I think it's okay. I think it's worth looking at, but obviously this is built with the idea of not having a single point of contact, right? So we may want to look at this and build it into whatever those liaison duties look like.
Combined with the.
Correct, but I also think in the midst of that, this is symbiotic with the director of operations job description, right? It has to be symbiotic with that, because we can't have fumbles, right? So I think looking at that job description, updating what needs to be updated in it, and utilizing it as a platform to build what the liaison roles and responsibilities look like. The fundamental basis, as I knew it, for liaison roles was a bridge of communication to and from departments. The board liaison was responsible to communicate board actions that had occurred in meetings, and pertinent discussion topics that had to do with those particular departments, all right? And the department liaison role was to communicate department needs, potential agenda items, and budgeting questions, things that have to do with finance and budget. And it was their bridge to the BOC office for those lines of communication. Obviously, a lot of that changes, right, with the role of director of operations. And so, again, I think this may require an individual working with. I don't know if it's an individual working with county council, if it's maybe a task force or a committee of 3 or 4 people try to work on this and build it. I don't know what the best action is, but I definitely know it's going to need some hours of work to build so that it is thoroughly vetted, and again, something that is sustainable.
So there's two things that, there's only 3 liaisons, so that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of department heads. So what I'd really like to have is input from the department heads to know what works best for them to be effective.
What are they looking for? Yeah.
And then build on that from there. I would like to see some, an agreement that we can maybe have right now that will help facilitate communication, and that is, if I am not the liaison with let's just say hypothetically, I want to go talk to maintenance. I've got some questions for maintenance about something that, I think you have maintenance, right?
No.
Jay has maintenance, okay.
Doesn't matter.
So let's say I want to go talk to maintenance. I've had some complaints from other department heads about some issue in the building, and I want to go talk to them about that. Before I do that, I think it's important from a deconfliction perspective to go to Tim first and say, hey, FYI, I'm going to go out and talk to maintenance about this issue. And he may say, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's been brought to my attention too. I've already gone out there and done this, and Commissioner Herzog has already gone out there and had this conversation. Oh, okay, give me an update on that. And then it won't cause an unnecessary amount of time for the department head, and it'll just be more efficient with the resources. So
Yeah.
If we can have that agreement, I think that professional agreement will help facilitate communication. We can do that right now. And then if the department heads can get together and talk about the role of a liaison and how it would benefit them most, whatever that mechanism is, I'd like to hear about that.
Agreed. And I don't know if it's a separate topic, but I think it's also beneficial to try to bring some of our other county electeds into the fold and
Yeah.
and try to reinstill some of those liaison relationships as designed, like a bridge of communication, that because the director of operations essentially becomes the direct report for our department heads.
Yeah.
And I see, as it evolves, our liaison roles become almost primary to the other electeds communicating to and from the BOC office.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the department heads are communicating through the director of operations, who then is communicating to us.
Yeah, I do feel like the communication between other elected officials here at the county has been good. But if there's a way to improve it, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Well, when you were here as an employee,
Mhm.
did you have, so you weren't elected, but elected officials used to have a liaison commissioner, and we kind of went away from that at some point. I don't know when.
Well, so when I was an employee, the liaison department head relationship was just that. It was a bridge of communication. I came to talk to my liaison when I had something to put on the agenda, when I had departmental budget questions, and that was pretty much the majority of my communication with the BOC office. And it was very much that way with almost all, it seemed, departments at the time. And I think in the shift, I was here when John Hitt was hired as the director of administration, and then shortly after it was
The other guy.
Schroeder.
Yeah.
And but I think what had ended up happening is we went from that model, and then we switched gears, and then as we switched back and forth a couple of times, it became very confusing on what the role really was. I think when the director of administration, was removed, then commissioners felt like they had to fill the void of oversight individually as a liaison to that department, which is interesting, right? Because as I understand it, each of us individually has almost no authority, but as a board, we have enormous authority. And so I think different personalities probably over time saw their role in a different view, and I think that's why it's pertinent that we have.
So I have a recommendation. How about we should have a managers meeting soon. At that managers meeting, we can hear input from department heads regarding that topic.
And let's have all the commissioners attend that as well,
Okay.
and all the electeds.
Okay.
And let's invite everybody,
And that discussion can be in that meeting, and then you can take away from that and incorporate that into the first issue of the rules, and make one final document that encompasses it all.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, and then who do we want to be the lead on building this, this protocol, this document? Between both, I think the job description probably needs to be reworked as we look through this, as well as creating the liaison expectations to complement that. So I think we need to identify somebody who's going to follow through on that.
How about all three of us look at that, mark it up, get it to Ted?
Okay.
And, I mean, that's just a spitball in here, but
That-
we can all look at it, make additions, corrections.
So we'll have a rough draft review, submit our review for a final draft.
Yeah. And then Ted, you bring back a final draft?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. That's just great. Okay. And then the next one.
Yep.
This one is just a discussion topic on us setting a time to establish some board goals and priorities. What is it that this board would like to see accomplished this year? What is in our purview to accomplish this year? What are some of the most pressing things that should be identified, so that we also have a common measuring stick to come back to and say, hey, we're here, and something to hold ourselves accountable to, at the end of the year, and how far did we get to this? Some of them might be long-term strategic, who knows, right? But where it goes. But I think having those and having a common language of where, those go, are vital to moving forward. It's really hard to move forward as one, but if we can identify a few key items that we all view is very fundamental, I think we can get stuff done in that manner.
I like it. No, I like it. I want to be held accountable, so I like that. And so are you thinking a top 3 priorities
Yeah.
for the year, or are you thinking
I definitely wouldn't go over 5, because then it gets a little muddy, right? It gets very difficult, but yeah, somewhere in there, 3 to 5.
okay. And we'd want to do that probably the first meeting?
We'd want to do it,
Or,
well.
you know what, how about the second meeting, because in election years, you'll have, the first meeting will be, you have somebody brand new
Yeah.
stepping into that, so maybe the second meeting in the first month.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely before budget season, so that if any of these priorities require resources,
Yeah.
then we're able to look at that time.
And remember, I think that you can discuss that idea, but you want to figure out a way to make those decisions outside of this workshop,
Right. Yeah.
Well,
So just,
it's so new in the year, we need to have that meeting. We need to have that meeting in March or April.
oh, it'd be fantastic to
Yeah.
get one this
So-
year, just to
Yeah.
kind of.
Maybe this,
Might be only 2.
Maybe 2,
2 or 3.
3, but
Yeah.
because we got a, pretty new board, and let's have that, get that hammered out in one of these sessions, just like this. Right, we can't make a decision and vote on anything today,
Right.
No.
even though it is a public meeting, but,
We can have consensus on a date, though.
yeah.
On when we would like to revisit this. And I'm assuming it would probably be in another workshop, and we'd come with some ideas and
Yeah.
flush them out and try to identify a few.
Yeah.
So
I
I
know
don't,
we were gonna talk about TLT stuff in the next meeting with Monica's here,
Yes.
in a workshop after the board meeting on the 15th. Am I,
Yes.
okay,
Because she's not here until, I think, the 11th.
okay. So, I don't know, would it be possible to have that workshop with those 2 items of, and then we got.
Why not?
We got till the 15th to kind of, put our top 3 in, and, but, So I think we all agree that number one is funding law enforcement, some kind of
Long-term funding.
long-term.
Funding the sheriff's department independently from the
Yep,
general fund.
yeah.
Right,
So, I mean,
but there might be some strategic plans that build a framework for that,
Right, yeah.
that we need to really look at as well. I mean, that's, I think, an overarching goal for sure. You know, but I mean, those are the big ones, right? For certain.
Yeah.
I mean, would you guys be okay with the 22nd? Because the 15th will be a really long day, and I
Yeah,
expect
well, yeah,
this.
that's true.
This will probably require, you know, a lot of,
That's just the following Wednesday, right?
yeah.
First, 15th, 22nd. That's
Actually,
what-
we're doing, on the 15th, we're doing the TSP,
Oh,
not
that,
TLT.
okay, that's that transport,
Transportation safety, plan.
So then,
That was Rabia telling us.
Then the
Okay.
TLT would be after that?
Yeah, TLT is gonna be subsequent, I think we're doing that, I think the following week.
The 22nd?
22nd, yeah, and we could do that on the
Well, we
20th.
could double it up on the 22nd without a regular.
Yeah, because the TSP is gonna be a pretty long one, I think,
Yeah.
from what I
And then
understand.
It goes into the evening, too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can do TLT and board priority and goals.
On the 22nd.
Okay.
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 it's the beginning of Ramadan, is that, have anybody upset, okay,
No?
I'll be able to attend.
there's a dot, so yeah, so it sounds good, 22nd.
Okay. Thanks, that's all I had.
Okay.
County funding request, Commissioner Alcorn.
All right, let's talk about how, so we have, everyone knows we have ARP money. I don't think any of us know exactly what that total is right now, because commitments were made to spend some of that money, some of it was spent, some of it's
Set aside.
committed to other things and set aside, so it's kind of a moving target. And then there's no way to know what's going to happen next year or 2 years from now. There may be some other form of ARP money, or who knows. So I think it's safe to say that we will probably likely have people that come in and represent their organization, their nonprofit, their role in the community, and they ask for money. So this discussion is about how do we do that, because right now we don't really have a solid, stable mechanism in place to do that. So what I'd like to get input on and clearly defined is, first of all, a time frame to do that. Because when people walk in here and they ask for money, we're essentially giving them a grant, if you will. So what would the time frame be, or what would the two of you like to see that time frame be for that process? So in other words, when we would actually fund the money, to me, I would like to see us get through budget's done, complete, we've committed everything, and then maybe July 1st, that's when we would actually award any funding to any group that was successful in making that application. So then when would we open that process for someone to come in, submit their application, submit a presentation, and then await the decision for the funding? When would you recommend that we start it? When would you recommend that we finish it?
Well, I've been a part of quite a few grants. And I think, you know, giving the appropriate amount of time, opening it up in terms of, for them to get the information to us, generally, I mean, I don't know, I'd say at least, you know, depending on how much we're asking for in the application, I mean, a month at minimum, I would say,
Okay.
before. Even 2 is good. And then, you know, then it gives it also time to receive and read and vet and go
Right.
through. And I would assume, starting after the budget in July 1, we would probably want to have a workshop discussion to look at them all
Yep.
formally, and then come out of that discussion having a pretty good idea of what can be funded. But yeah, and then who's going to design the application process and look at the requirements that we're requesting from these potential grantees?
Right, and let's get to that in just a second. Do you agree with kind of that time frame?
Yeah?
So if we were to say,
First week of July, or?
March 1st begins the application process?
Oh, okay, I got you.
Or April, you mean? We're already past March.
I'm sorry, or May 1st.
Oh, okay.
How about May 1st?
Sir, yeah, that gives us plenty of time to build the application.
So May 1st, you can submit an application, and then the first workshop in July, we will discuss the applications, and then the following business meeting, we'll make the decision. Does that work?
Those are very doable timelines.
Okay. All right. Then the next would be the actual physical application and what we would want people to submit with that. Now, we have an ARP application. I think Mary Rowe brought them in here.
I have one right here.
Seen them before.
I filled that out for the city of Brookings,
Okay.
so I can tell you all about it.
So what if we took that application and used it as a model, and then we can discuss additional documents that we might want an applicant to provide with that?
Did the city have a application too? Did you guys give out?
No.
Okay.
No, but we had applied for the ARP county grant for matching funds for Kidtown. Here it is. So, I mean, it was very straightforward, and it was probably one of the easier grant applications to fill out. Have you looked at it much to see what?
I have seen it, yeah.
So I'd have to look at it on the from the lens of receiving it, not filling it out, to see what there could be. In terms of.
I think we can use that document as the model, and
Sure.
then just determine what we would like to include with that. Do we want to include profit loss statement? Do we want to include other grants that the organization may already be receiving, or and of course some of this may be non-applicable. And I will use David as an example, who's trying to develop multiple housing units and.
David Allen? Yep.
Yeah, so he's a good example
Yeah.
of an individual who's trying to add value to the community by
Yeah.
creating multi-unit housing. But he's potentially could ask for help with that. So, he doesn't have other grant applications in, so that would just be a non-applicable section in there. But maybe with him, we would want to ask potential earnings. I'm just throwing ideas out here.
Oh, like a
Yeah.
business plan?
Yeah.
If you have a business plan, it should be for whatever you're doing, or some sort of, well, I really think that it is appropriate to have a business plan for each grant, what you're gonna do with it. We've had, in my limited experience here, we've had people walk in and say, well, we just wanna throw that money into what we're doing. Well, I think it's important that that is, that we understand the scope of what, because, there are a lot of bottomless needs out there, and I think it needs to be clear to you guys and to the public, what we're contributing to a particular effort.
Sure. Well, and I will say that every grant application that I've had to fill out, all requested at least 2 years of financials, Schedule C minimum, and a current year profit and loss. And it's interesting, I called one of the grantees to ask, or grantors, there's a lot of information. one of the things that caught me off guard was they said, well, we need to make sure that you're going to be financially stable enough to be able to use the grant long-term.
Right.
Sure.
And, those are pretty important processes.
I think that's the part that really concerns me, because, I haven't seen any of these so far, but I have been aware of, entities that have been formed specifically to capture one grant, and that might be appropriate in certain circumstances, but really, you want to be well informed on that before you go forward.
Well, even when we apply for state grants, for instance, when I applied for the OPRD grant as a county employee, I had to give them current year's budget to show that we were financially solvent to make our match in a match grant. So, it's not unheard for even the governments to have to provide financials for granting information.
I'd also like to know if an organization is already receiving multiple grants. So maybe we have two competing organizations. One has 4 incoming grants, one has none. And both are important issues to the community. That would be a factor that I would consider. So
Yeah.
maybe current grants.
Well, and I will say on a scoring factor, especially when you're asking for some of this, is a lot of times the organizations will have a set of priorities that you're scored on based on what you're asking for and going to provide in line with those said priorities. So, if the county had a priority in saying, for instance, I'm just going to throw it right, whatever, housing, and then, we have this scoring system that says, and when somebody applies.
That's coming up next. You're getting ahead of me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So at the end of the budget cycle, we will have a complete breakdown of ARP funds. And we get that. I guess it would come from Frank. So we get that from Frank. It'd be a complete breakdown, so we know exactly where we are, what the balances are. We can start the process on May 1st and complete it July 1st will be the closing date. First workshop, we'll discuss it. The first business meeting, we will approve it. And we will use that physical application, and then the accompanying documents would be a business plan, 2-year financials, current profit loss statement, and any current grant information that the organization has.
So I got a question. So if we start this in May, not knowing what the budget is going to be, there might not be,
There may be no money.
yeah.
And that, we'll know that.
Yep.
In July, and then at the first business meeting, we would.
But they'll be ahead of the game as
We
far
would
as.
announce that we don't have any money to
Yeah.
give.
Because we used, I think, 1.8 last year to help balance. Yeah, okay. I know we've been far less informal,
Right.
up to now.
And again, I'm looking for a fair and equitable way to do this,
Yep.
because, we have the food bank come in, we have the water district come in, we have some individuals come in that are really trying to add housing to the community. All are extremely important, and I don't want this to feel like Shark Tank. I want it to feel
Yep.
like there's a process that's fair and equitable. So, if there's no money, there's no money. If there's $50,000, then we would make a decision about how that would be spent. If that's what we have, that's what we have.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so.
Just so they know that going in.
Yes, everybody knows,
That's
you know.
gotta be the goal is.
Exactly, it's like any grant, there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got our timeline, we've got our format and structure to the actual application. So then the next thing that I think the people who are applying for grants should or would want to know is, what are this county's priorities? What is the list? Is it safety? Is it water? Is it housing? Is it What is it?
We might be able to talk about that in our priorities.
Yeah, we'll have that.
Well, and this would be my question to the two of you is would it be safe to say that those priorities are in line with the priorities of this funding?
I don't know.
Is that what we would want to do?
I don't know.
Should be.
Because I think some of the internal priorities, getting organized, right?
Sure.
Don't really align. But we definitely have some, our community priorities would certainly align, right? I would assume they would certainly align. So, yeah, I think it's a great way to identify what those are before May in that meeting, May.
Well, maybe, and when you make your list of priorities, your priorities, but then you're gonna have priorities, but then you're gonna have specific action priorities that are gonna be limited to a short list.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just make that clear to, to the public so that everybody, because you'll have, for example, housing is a priority for the county, but we can only, facilitate.
Right.
So,
Well, here would be an example. Let's say hypothetically, we identified the number one priority to be housing.
Mhm.
And then we have a grant application for a person an individual who wants to create a complex with 25 units.
Mhm.
Obviously, that adds significant value to the housing problem. And he's submitted an application against the water district and against some other community social issue. Then he would have priority because we've identified housing is the priority, correct?
If we create a scoring system, there might be different metrics on different, in terms of financial stability and et cetera, et
Sure,
cetera.
sure.
But it certainly would receive the highest priority score.
Because we had identified that. Okay. So then I think if we use the external priorities in what you're doing, it would make sense that those external priorities would be
Aligned.
aligned with the grant application, so they would know that.
Yeah. Governmental priorities might be a little bit different, like what we plan to achieve.
right.
As opposed to what we would like to see for the community to
Yeah.
achieve, but.
Community priorities.
Yes, community.
So that's how you, that's how
So
you
maybe we
recommend.
define it that way, community priorities and governmental priorities. And that when a grant application is directly in line with community priorities, that
Sure.
obviously that's gonna score higher than one that is not.
Yeah, housing, employment,
Sure.
securities, food securities.
Sure.
All those, yeah, sure.
Okay. And then we'll be able to clarify that in the work that you do on establishing that.
Okay.
That work?
Works for me.
Seems like a pretty clear process.
Yeah, we'll probably have to dial in some timelines, like when we're gonna know what, how we're gonna score and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the process I liked a lot. Certainly.
Okay.
Three of us could get the applications and we score them and
Yeah, yeah,
and
then
combine them.
Then we come together and say, well, where were you at? And
This is,
get an average and
Yep.
there we go.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions on that?
No, good idea. Great work.
All right, so then the next issue would be that I have on here is the generator failure, the annex generator failure. So the first thing that I think is important to clarify is who's responsible for maintenance, ensuring that the proper working function, which department is responsible for the checks and balances associated with the machinery that's there? Because we have to ensure that those are 100% functional.
So in the past, the road department has always managed all of our generators. It's an engine. So, it was Bob and Rocky. And they would go up to Lobster Creek and they would service our generator at Lobster Creek and they would service all the generators. That was That's how it was. Now, I don't know if that trend changed over time, but from what I'm kind of gathering, it has. And so I do know that it worked, because they had a schedule. And they'd simply just call and say, hey, do you got the keys to the gate? All right, let's go. We're gonna go up there. We're gonna take care of it.
Sounds like a good system to me.
It was a really good system because they're the ones who were knowledgeable about how engines operate, if they needed to fix something, if they needed to change something, if they needed to order something. They knew what needed to happen. So, I mean, that seemed to work really well. I don't know how it changed or if it changed, but it worked.
I'm a little bit foggy on that. Maybe you can help me, but so the first generator failure last year with the fuel issue. So I remember I saw references or heard that somebody had decided that we were going to save money by not refueling it on a regular.
I don't remember hearing that.
It was an odd thing it was a rumor that there was commissioner input in the oversight of that generator.
I don't remember.
Okay.
That ever. No.
I don't know that either. It just seemed odd because, but there clearly is when it happened, we had to reach out for the road department, and Charles was trying to
Right.
playing catch up and doing all that stuff, and there was clearly not a standard operating procedure that the parties were familiar with that should have been seamless.
Yeah. So the road department takes care of all the other generators. Why wouldn't they take care of this?
Well, so since I've been here, he took care of that generator. He made sure every Wednesday at noon or whatever.
Tad did.
Tad did, and then Tad went to the road department. So it was always my understanding that it was maintenance because I just associated with Tad. And when you were here, do you remember that generator coming on for 15 minutes on a weekly basis?
Once a week, yeah.
So this is the thing we should explore with the road department today at our meeting.
Yeah.
Now,
Find out, because Tad's there now.
Yeah.
and so here I would say there's
And there's a generator in the bottom of the sheriff's building.
There was the maintenance of it, and then there was the oversight, right? So I'll give you an instance for like Lobster Creek. I was the one making sure it doesn't run out of propane and making sure that it was in working order, like inspecting it more regularly.
Oil changes.
They were the ones who had it on a schedule, like to come up
For servicing.
3 times a year to service it,
Okay.
to all those things. So I may have misrepresented.
Okay, so we'll get caught up with what the road department perceives as its duties toward the generators and what Tad did with maintenance back when he was at maintenance, because maybe that's where things changed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, what I want to see is a strict protocols
Policy.
and policy
Yeah.
of who is responsible for what, so that we ensure with as much as we can that that's not going to happen again. So we'll talk when we have a meeting today at 2:30 at the road department, so we'll address that out there. And then I Ted should be able to lock that down protocol-wise, what those responsibilities are. Then the other issue with that is it's machinery, so it's going to fail. It's going to fail again.
Just when you need it the most.
And when that happens, the server goes down. So, do we want to have an outside server? So that when that happens, we don't lose valuable information, the county doesn't shut down, and we continue to function.
Now, are you talking about to preserve information, like
Preserve
a cloud-based?
Preserve information, not lose any information, ensure the integrity of our system.
Because if we do lose generator in the midst of power, we still wouldn't have power. We wouldn't have
Right.
access, but we wouldn't be losing vital information and having to rebuild it in a server that,
Like we've done twice now.
yeah. I don't even know. That's so far past my IT understanding. I don't even know what the costs are
I have
on
problems
something.
with this, so
What that looks like. I'm assuming that's a lot of storage and information in a cloud-based system. It'd be interesting to see what those numbers are.
Okay, we can ask.
I do remember talking to the clerk's office one time about, and there was a fellow that was hooked up with Homeland Security, and he wanted that. And it was something about, we take this information, put it on something, and store it in Bend, Oregon.
Mhm.
So a big one comes, we have, I don't know, yeah.
So-
A disc or I don't know exactly, but there was talk of
So,
that.
how about we do two things? Ted can check and see on a cost, see what that cost is, just to ensure the integrity of that system, so we don't lose valuable information and we don't incur some enormous cost when it happens. And then I would also like to direct Monica to see if there is any grants out there that are Homeland Security related or such that might cover some of those costs or all of the costs. And if there are, then we can potentially pursue a grant for that if it fits.
So
That's a no-brainer.
I talked to Brent Bischoff at Coos Curry Electric about that, some of this earlier this week, and it was the battery backup question.
Yeah.
And I've heard 2 minutes, and he's saying, no, battery backup is 10 minutes. You have, once that thing doesn't start, you have that's gonna keep things going for 10 minutes. And then that's the battery backup for IT.
Okay.
So what about making it a bigger battery backup, of 30 minutes or even an hour, so people have time to get stuff, because I don't know how long it was when it didn't come on and the lights didn't, but then it finally did. Do you know how long that time period was?
I don't know exactly. It was within an hour, that Charles was down here
Yeah.
and changed the battery and then it cranked on.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine what the battery situation would look like to power all of our facilities for an hour. That would be pretty impressive.
Oh, I don't, is it? I don't know.
I'm just assuming, because
I
there's a lot of
I
energy.
just think of those little
consumption.
black things underneath my desk. That's a battery backup, right? For my computer?
What? Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay, Elizabeth.
Uh,
So I don't know about that. I'm just saying, that'd be something we could ask Dan.
Yeah, well, I'll ask him. We can look at battery backups as I think, because the problem is, there's a lot that is driven by that. And even, even if it was just somehow confined just to the computers, I don't exactly,
Well, we're still also negotiating with Coos Curry Electric
Right.
for IT services, so maybe we can kind of
yeah, we'll ask him.
Yeah.
pull that into that.
Yep,
It might not be feasible. I don't know.
we'll find out.
But we can include that in that part of the discussion, so do we agree on that too?
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely good to,
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
investigate for sure.
All right, answers, questions? You're good?
That's what I was looking for.
Okay, very good. It's public comment time. We got public comment just walked in, Brent Thompson from BOPTA. Val Early's here, Dave's here.
I don't want a public comment, I want to comment as an elected official, David Barnes, County Treasurer.
What's your address? We need all that info. No, it's just.
94235 Moore Street, Suite
Okay, write that
124, I
down.
believe. The first thing on your list was the rules of order, and you tied public comments into that also. The other day when there was a meeting in here, we had a meeting on Monday, I believe it was, about North Bank Road. And you'd asked for public comments, and at the end of it, I stood up to ask about the cost of the thing. And it was implied at that time that this was another public comment session, and it was not. It was directed to you from my office. The standard procedure has always been that if there's an issue that involves the sheriff's department or a department here, if you have a human resources question, Julie's watching the meeting in her office, she comes down and answers the question for you. I think I'd like you to make sure that there remains a differentiation between public comment and staff and elected comments, because this was something that, what you're going to spend on this impacted me and my office. So I felt that I had the obligation and the authority to come in and ask about it. So I just want, as you're doing it, I'd like to make sure that that remains in place, that that electeds and department heads who it pertains to them and their function, that they're still allowed to ask questions when a topic comes up and not just part of the general public comment piece.
Can I just make a comment real quick? I agree with that. And all I think the misunderstanding that we had is when I call for a vote or a motion, we got a motion and a second. When I ask for discussion, I usually assume that that's just the three of us.
Oh, I do too, but I didn't get a chance
okay.
to pipe up before you got to that part.
That was my
Okay,
my only.
not a problem.
Can I speak on that too?
Yeah, sure.
The one thing that I think that would also help with all of this is, especially having a director of operations, is now when an agenda comes out and you see that it's going to be something that could potentially impact you, you have a single person you can ask, hey, I know you're working on this, how much is this going to cost? And also that should also be reciprocated forward as well, so that a lot of those questions can be answered prior to, and then if you have questions about those answers,
Right.
then that might be something that comes.
It was just, it was something, there was a whole conversation about doing this, but there was no discussion about the cost of it. So, that was just something that
And nobody knows.
it was just something I wanted to be aware of, because I might have to move money around, make money available to do something like this. So, on the rules of order portion also, if you and Ted are going to work on this, I'd be glad to participate with you on that, to put together a set of rules of order for how meetings are conducted and stuff like that. So, next was the liaisons. That'll hash itself out with the director of operations. I'm not sure. I don't really have anything to say about that then. I do like the idea of a priorities list and having goals. If you don't have goals, how do you know when you get where you're going? So, and I think that's important. The procedure for handing out money, I absolutely agree with what you're doing. I do question the timeline, though. We're going to ask people on May 1st to start submitting applications when we won't know if we have money for them till July 1st. And I'm wondering if maybe you want to consider, once the budget is done and approved and we know how much money might be available, starting the process, the application process July 1st, having them in by August 15th, gives you 2 weeks, and on September 1st, you grant money to people if there is any available. I know myself, I would be frustrated if I was, as an entity, if I spent, doing a grant application, Jay, is a process, and it takes quite a while. It's a commitment to get it done. And to do one in May in hopes of getting money come July, and then finding out on June 15th or June 30th that there is no money available, I would find that to be frustrating and annoying. So I would just ask you to reconsider your timeline on that. So I know that we're just in a workshop today and nothing is done in stone, so.
It would help a little bit, because going in, there might not be, but it.
Yeah, no,
and
good point.
This grant application isn't like grant applications, or is it? Is this?
Well, no, I think it's, you're committing, and it would be better to know, if you're expending work on it, would be better to know if you're talking about $50 or $50,000 or,
Right. We announce when the budget is done that we have a pot of money that's $200,000 that we can make available out to community-based organizations or other groups.
that conform with the county's priority list.
Well, and it also gives us more of a scope on on maximum and minimum size of grant opportunities,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Good
Yeah.
point, Dave.
Okay. And that was it, thank you.
Val, you didn't drive all the way up here not to say something, I know it. Okay. Brent?
No, I just saw in the paper that had a meeting today, so I.
Okay.
Don't remember the commissioner report actually.
All right, so Brad Alcorn, Brent Thompson. Brent is on the BOPTA board, so we did that yesterday. Jay
How you doing?
Gross,
And I did apply to be on the county planning commission, I think, in March.
okay.
I think it's 14 years of planning commission prior to.
All right, well, if there is no more public comment and you, nothing else to hash out, we're adjourned. Thanks for coming.